Hey guys, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. This is your host Thomas Sire from On the Hot Podcast. Today, this is going to be episode 166 for you guys today. Of course, this episode is going to be coming out on all four of our platforms, our Instagram account, our Facebook account, our YouTube account, and our Apple Podcast account. So let's go ahead and dive into the first segment of the episode this week. Which AFC team will be the biggest threat to the back-to-back Super Bowl champions in the Kansas City Chiefs? So in this segment, I'll be sharing which team I do believe is the biggest threat to the Kansas City Chiefs in the AFC. That team I will say first. And then I have two honorable mentions that I do believe can give the Kansas City Chiefs a run for their money in the AFC Conference this year and stop them from possibly going to their third straight Super Bowl appearance. So this team right here in the AFC, I do believe, is the biggest threat to the Kansas City Chiefs. And it's a team that the Kansas City Chiefs are very familiar with. It's the Cincinnati Bengals. I just feel like heading into this 2024-25 NFL season, the Cincinnati Bengals are the biggest threats to the Kansas City Chiefs. It's because of one guy and one player that the Cincinnati Bengals have. It's Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow that is 3-1 head-to-head against Patrick Mahomes. He's already beaten him in an AFC Championship game, something that Josh Allen hasn't done, something that Lamar Jackson hasn't done. Hell, the only person to ever beat Patrick Mahomes in an AFC Championship game other than Joe Burrow was Tom Brady when he was playing with the New England Patriots. When they did that and beat Patrick Mahomes in the AFC Championship back in 2019. Now, looking at this Bengals team, they still have the trio of Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, an explosive offensive trio in the National Football League. They've improved their offensive line during the NFL offseason. They improved their defense in the NFL offseason. The only question mark is Joe Burrow's health. But if Joe Burrow can stay healthy for most of the NFL season, look out the Kansas City Chiefs, because this is a guy that has your guys' number. 3-1 in head-to-head matchups. Of course, 1-1 in the AFC Championship. But no other elite caliber quarterback in the AFC can say they beat Patrick Mahomes in the AFC Championship other than Joe Burrow. And he has the playoff success to make things happen in the AFC. So I just think, based off of history and based off of what I've seen when this guy is healthy, like I said last week on the podcast, when me, Rob, and Fred were doing our top 10 quarterback list, I stated that Joe Burrow, in my eyes, is a generational talent. The only thing that hurts him is staying on the field and being healthy on a yearly basis. And we know Joe Burrow has the unfortunate history of injuries thus far in his NFL career. But when the man is healthy on the field, there are only a few quarterbacks that I would have that I would trust to go out there and give me a game-winning drive when the game on the line. And Joe Burrow is definitely in that conversation when he is healthy. So I have to say the Bengals are the biggest threat to the Chiefs if Joe Burrow can play at an MVP caliber level and stay healthy this year. Now, my two honorable mentions, I'll start off with honorable mention number one. It's the Houston Texans. The Houston Texans have improved from top to bottom. Overall, this roster, offensively, defensively, is going to be a well-oiled machine heading into this upcoming NFL season. And it starts with their new franchise quarterback, C.J. Stroud, who took this team from the ground up, brought them from when they were nothing into something, a true contender in the AFC now. I mean, when C.J. Stroud was drafted by the Houston Texans in the 2022 NFL Draft, the Texans had the second overall pick, meaning that they were the second worst team in the NFL by the time that C.J. Stroud arrived. And, of course, C.J. Stroud hasn't done it alone, but the fact that C.J. Stroud has had a huge impact on this team. They won the AFC South. They won a playoff game last year, defeating the Cleveland Browns in the wild card game. And they were hanging with the Baltimore Ravens in the divisional round to the second half, rolled around, and the Texans' offensive line couldn't stop a pass rush to save their lives. But as I digress, you guys get the point. The Texans have arrived, and the defense has gotten better this offseason. They brought in Stephon Diggs. They brought in Joe Mixon. And having Stephon Diggs to play alongside of Nico Collins, Tank Dell, Noah Brown, those three wide receivers did their thing last year. And you also have their reliable tight end and Dalton Schultz. And you also add Joe Mixon, who has been a reliable running back over the last few years in the NFL, known for his time with the Cincinnati Bengals. Actually, speaking of their running backs, they now have a running back depth of Joe Mixon, Cam Akers, and Dameon Pierce. And if Cam Akers and Dameon Pierce stays on the roster by week 1, they could have a good depth, a good running back room in Houston. I mean, I think the sky's the limit for this team heading into next year. And they're obviously the favorites to win the AFC South again. The only thing and the only reason why I couldn't put them over top of the Cincinnati Bengals is because I had to see C.J. Stroud do it again. Your rookie season was sensational. One of the greatest rookie seasons in NFL history at the quarterback position. But I need to see him do it again. I need to see him have the same production when defensive coordinators around the NFL will have more time to dissect the film on how good C.J. Stroud is. And they'll show it in their defensive plans this upcoming NFL season. And I'm not doubting C.J. Stroud by any means. But I just can't put the Houston Texans over the Cincinnati Bengals as the biggest threat to the Kansas City Chiefs, because the Cincinnati Bengals had the history of defeating Patrick Mahomes and Kansas City Chiefs. Joe Burrow has the history of beating Patrick Mahomes head-to-head and head-to-head games. Joe Burrow beating Patrick Mahomes 3 times and Mahomes only beating Burrow once in the AFC Championship a few years ago. So that's the only reason why I don't have the Texans. Now, my third honorable mention is the Baltimore Ravens. Now, the second honorable mention. Don't get me wrong, the Baltimore Ravens will send shockwaves to the AFC and the NFL this upcoming NFL season. We all know Lamar Jackson is a top 5 talent at the quarterback position in the National Football League, 2-time MVP, one of the most successful regular season quarterbacks this era of football has seen in recent memory. Don't get me wrong with that. But looking at what happened to the Baltimore Ravens this offseason, even though they got Derrick Henry, and they're going to establish that in Todd Monken's offense of the RPO game of Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry in the running game, we know that's their meat and potatoes in that Todd Monken's offense with the Baltimore Ravens. They love to run the ball down your throat. However, getting Derrick Henry was nice, but they were handicapped in NFL free agency because they only had a total of $10 million to spend. They lost Patrick Queen. I don't care what anybody says. Roquan Smith is one of the best linebackers in the National Football League. However, Patrick Queen played a big role in that Baltimore Ravens defense last year. It was huge to lose Patrick Queen during the NFL offseason and see him sign with a foe in the Pittsburgh Steelers, with him staying in the AFC North playing for a divisional rival, hurts. So you lost Patrick Queen. You lost 3 starting offensive linemen. You lost Javon Clowney. You can laugh about Javon Clowney for those watching and listening all you want, but he was the most productive pass rusher that the Baltimore Ravens had last year, being a veteran player in the NFL. They watched him go to the Carolina Panthers. They lost Gus Edwards in the backfield. Gus Edwards, even though you upgraded from Derrick Henry to Gus Edwards, it's still good to have depth at the running back position. J.K. Dobbins is no longer there. I understand the man is injury prone in his own way. That's not a big loss. But they also lost Geno Stone, their safety, that was a very productive tackler last year for this #1 ranked Baltimore Ravens defense. And speaking of the defense, they lost Mike McDonald, who was their defensive-minded head coach, or defensive-minded defensive coordinator, who was the mastermind behind that good Baltimore Ravens defense. And he went on to become the head coach of the Seattle Seahawks, replacing Pete Carroll. So the Ravens are my second honorable mention right now. Obviously, we got a long way to go with this long NFL season. But I just feel like right now, the biggest threats in order to the Kansas City Chiefs, 1, the Cincinnati Bengals, my #1 honorable mention at 2 being the Houston Texans, and 3, the Baltimore Ravens as my second honorable mention. So those teams are going to be looking out for. I think the AFC is going to be fun to watch. We'll see who becomes the best team in the AFC as the weeks go in this upcoming NFL season.